I have Dan today with me. Dan is a change maker, as he has shown to be in a very short time at Baker Hughes, one of my favorite persons to be working with, and for the whole Lightup team. Dan is the person who gets things done and moves fast. So, super excited to get Dan's take on what his work has been with Lightup and more broadly, improving data quality at Baker Hughes, which you can imagine is a huge challenge at the scale of Baker Hughes. And over to you, Dan, to introduce yourself first and then maybe talk about the company too before we dive into the content.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Hi, my name is Dan McPartland. It's nice to meet everybody. I've been working at Baker Hughes for about 8 months now. I am the chief architect for what's called the OFSC Data Office, and I'm excited to show you what we've done in just this quick 8 months that I've been here and working with Lightup and some of the things that they've helped make a reality for us.
So, Dan, if you don't mind talking about Baker Hughes real quick, just give us a sense of what's the scale you're dealing with here.
So as you can see, Baker is a pretty large company, 55,000 employees. We operate in pretty much every country where there's oil, and we have an annual revenue of about $21 billion. But really, we're leading the energy technology company. We design, manufacture, and service really some transformational technologies to help take energy forward. We have one large piece of the business that's called oil field shared services and equipment, and that's where I'm focusing on for the most part. But there's also a new energy capability that's been structured and that's leading the way in more of our path to reduce our carbon footprint and make us just a little bit more effective in the way that we use oil, find oil, and safe keyword safety, obtain oil.
Right.
So
And I mean, just the scale here is impressive. Like you said, pretty much any country out there that has oil, you are there, right? And I think to our audience, it would be very insightful to understand what does data mean to Baker Hughes. In this case, it sounds like data is really front and center to the company, and I mean, it's literally oil for you. It sounds like, right? So, can you elaborate on that?
absolutely. Uh, I do need to provide a little bit of background here, where in the world of Baker Hughes, we've assigned a chief digital officer for our oil field services and equipment business. His name's Jim Brady. He happens to be my boss, and he's really trying to basically digitally transform not only what we do internally in the company, but the software that we actually sell to our customers as well. Right. So as the company's reorganized, we've added differentiators in this digital space with a deep focus on data and analytics. Right. So I came in and we've basically launched an initiative which is a little bit more internally focused to realign our business workflows and kind of the systems and the applications that support them. And product line by product line, we're setting up these working sessions to really realign with the business, understand their pain points, and in general, let's just say, really understand and classify their problems, right? These challenges tend to fall into these three buckets. Application configuration, like do we need to modify that the way SAP works or the Oracle ERPs, right? Is this really a data quality issue because the person who you're expecting to enter clean data before didn't, and then you're constantly chasing them? Or is this in general just a lack of training and change management because people have changed hands over the years that the company has operated? Right. Our initial focus was on what we call demand to deliver. And this is really going to be covering everything that you see at the top of the screen there, which is engineering, procurement, supply chain, sourcing, and manufacturing. And really, we're focused on sort of both of the routes parts that we build, which is the engineering, manufacturing to sustain approach, versus parts that we acquire over time, like sourcing and procurement. Right. And again, these two common themes that you see at the bottom here low quality data entry, which causes a process to sort of not execute very smoothly, which then executive leadership or senior vice presidents, they make decisions based on very limited data, which causes a very giant company or problem for the company, like excess inventory, right? Or more specifically, we expected data to be populated, so we're missing critical data, which leads to categorization mismatches, which is a very, very big problem in the engineering business, which causes shipment issues, which frustrates our customers because we don't deliver our products on time, right? So again, the output of these deep dive sessions is really to get into that level of detail so that we can go and practice like a continuous improvement type of approach to both not only data but the process that supports it.
This is extremely interesting to me because and this is one of the things that I think Dan I really enjoyed in our conversations leading up to this point, which is you always start with the business problem, and to you data is a backbone on which the business process is really riding, right? And it's all about the business process. It's not
Right,
just about the data in its own right. So it's about what it means to the process here, and this is literally operational data, right? So
right.
analytics here is directly driving your business operations. And if you can help us understand what happens from an impact point of view, obviously talking about the use cases, but how far does this become visible? Who all get to see this in the organization when data comes out broken and it breaks process, right? I mean, these must be really high value incidents that are happening in your setup, which are showing all the way up, aren't they?
Yeah, and that's the thing is we've started out these workshops with the people who are actually sort of doing the data entry and the people who oversee them, right? But as we are working on some of these, I hate to say basic level problems, but because they're not really basic at all, um, we start to see the outputs from processes running smoother at like a very high level, ranking people in the company. Um, but it's what's sort of interesting, and there isn't really a direct correlation to it, but we hear quite frequently, hey, we heard you guys fixed problem X, and then that has removed one headache for me. So it really all levels of the company are actually feeling the output of some of our workouts and some of the solutions that we've delivered for them.
Right. And segueing into how you have started to build out the solution, can you walk us through the data stack and why this particular architecture?
Sure. Yeah, really to start to resolve these pain points outlined by the business, we've structured this technology stack to really create digital twins, right? We rely extensively on the Databricks Lighthouse architecture with a blend of Delta Live and Unity Catalog to really enable secure access to really some sensitive company data. We use Lightup as a low code technology to provide crystal clear visibility into some of the data problems which the business users are experiencing. Elation to really classify our data models, identify key points of contact. And this is a very key point for me. Quite often, the person who's out in the business that's telling us in data to do things sort of remains behind the scenes, and we end up having to reroute a lot of questions. Why did you make said decision about this one particular data object? And we can point them directly towards our business stakeholder so that they can actually field those questions because we're sort of just doing what we're told on some levels, right? We also use Elation to really visualize some of the lineage and publish the data health from the whole integration between Lightup and Elation. And then with this stack, we're now able to really quantify some of these data anomalies and use analytics to make recommendations and even highlight or low light process efficiencies or inefficiencies at that point.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, just the scale of data here is impressive, which is not surprising considering the scale at which Baker operates.
Right.
Um, I'm curious if you have seen other approaches being tried before this architecture where you didn't have this kind of a digital twin and where it would get really stuck when it came to exposing gaps in data.
Yeah. So the position I'm in, it's sort of interesting because I may be the seventh or eighth person who's come around and told the data story. And unfortunately, there's been a little bit of success in those spaces, but we didn't really embrace a culture of continuous monitoring, continuous improvement, unfortunately. So at Baker, when data got so bad that it needed to be addressed, an executive or somebody would feel the pain. They would stand up a group of people to go and fix the data in the systems, and then they would finish, and then the data would be really high and pristine, and then would slide right back down to where we are, right? So within, so one of the things we're focusing quite a bit on is really structuring a good business engagement, and really enabling federated data governance, right? Because the one thing that we've realized, if you want to be successful in enterprise data, you do not create a very complicated process that only a few sets of people know how to execute. Well, you want to give and equip users with the tools to be able to kind of govern themselves, but also stay more of a high ranking kind of enterprise data governance approach. So just doing that alone is really kind of one of the major keys to our success.
Right, great point. And I think that's one of the themes that kept coming up in this conversation, which is people move, data literacy moves with them. And so it's not a one off initiative, it's not a one time process to go fix a data set, right? I mean, unless you're building the process in a way so that this can become part of everyday life for everyone dealing with data, that's the only way you're going to succeed. And but that's a big undertaking compared to just trying to fix it once in one place, right?
Right. And what's nice is instead of us as the data organization coming to the business and saying, "Do me a favor, uh, I know you're really really busy right now, but take extra time out of your day to fix some data that does not affect your day to day life." Right. And of course, it's a hard sell. I mean, who would ever want to do that? Versus the people in the business saying, when this data is not correct, then they go after other people in the business to fix it, and and then to train and to become literate in what in the processes and what they're really supporting downstream.
Exactly. And so zooming into that one aspect, right? So here's a blow up of just one part of your stack, which is creating a digital twin of data in SAP. And I think one of the themes that you talked about, which I found very, very insightful, was you have been able to get people to shift their attention from, or complement their attention from just the business process side of things and SAP screens to something that is much more data facing. Can you talk through what that looks like?
Yes, of course. So unlocking the data, and that's just such an awesome way to put it. Unlocking the data, right, at Baker Hughes has been a very big splash, right? In our first demo of Lightup to our SAP users, they immediately saw the value. Like literally instantaneously, they switched from running reports in SAP, exporting to Excel, writing pivot tables to, wait a minute, I can do that in Lightup. I can do it relatively straightforward as long as I get some basic training. And maybe you in data have configured 4 or 5, let's say, DQI templates that they can copy and change where clauses around if they really need to do that, right?
EQI
And
templates here are data quality indicators. So kind of
yes,
the lighter primitive to define a data quality metric, which then you
right.
can start to detect anomalies with.
Yes, absolutely. And and quite frankly, I haven't seen this type of transformation before. Like I was very, very surprised. Um, Unfortunately, it put a ton of pressure on my team since we were set up to really operate in more of a waterfall methodology where we had signed off business requirement document, right, to really more of a JAD or a joint application development approach, right? And this is altering the way that we actually approach the business as well, right? Because when we run these workshops, we sit down and quite frankly, it's a marathon session. You got maybe 10, 15 people from the business. You got some people from SAP, some process people, some data people, and we're trying to like articulate workflows. And it's tiring. We got to pump a lot of caffeine to the room, if that makes sense, right? So now we're pivoting towards, instead of documenting these pain points and then getting sign off and then quantifying the data and then mobilizing a team, pre workshop, we reach out, we obtain all the data and the systems that they need, we get it into Databricks, and then we configure all of our connections within Lightup so that when somebody says, this one problem happens all the time, right? We say, okay, hang on, somebody check that really quick. They do that and say, no, that actually only happens a couple of times a day. So it's not worth these 10 or 15 people's time to sit and document and go through the nth level of detail to what that pain point's about. So again, for me, it's really, it's solving a lot of problems, if that makes sense.
Right, right. So in this model, Databricks is effectively becoming an analytical mirror onto your business process.
Right.
And now this is one-stop shop where you can start to not just test data but therefore also test process. But it's not reactive. You can be very proactive about this, right? You can always say any data set or any data elements that are critical to success of the business process should be propagated to Databricks already and be maintained there too. And so now you can start to continuously keep running those checks, and even the checks now become proactive, right? So that's kind of the
Absolutely.
architecture this is able to drive. And what did it take to really get the business users to shift their attention? I mean, was it really just showing them what can be accomplished now, which is something they had desired for a very long time? So kind of making them aware of the art of possible. Is that what really got their attention?
Yeah, it was the very first time when we did it this traditional route, right? Where we went through the workshops, we did the BRDs, we got formal sign-offs on everybody, and we were doing literally our first sprint demo to them. And I was running the session, and I started off by showing them what do they consider to be a very basic metric, which is show me them what materials have been created in the last couple of days, and just kind of visualize that data. Yeah, sure, I can do that. That's relatively straightforward. But when they threw a complicated use case at us, like it's just this business of what we refer to as plant extensions in SAP, and we were able to show them right down to the detail exactly the records that were missing. They said, "Wow!" First off, immediately shifted to how do I do that? We talked about the integrations that you support within the Lightup platform. So should we ping a Teams channel? Would you like to be emailed? Do you want to create a queue in ServiceNow? So it sort of built that first data remediation plan kind of in real time. And then somebody said, I checked one of the records that Lightup has identified as being discrepant, and it wasn't. And we said, where's the logic change? Or, what part did we miss? And it was just basically one small condition. I added it in Lightup and hit submit, and they were like, that's how long it takes you to do that? And we said, yeah, of course that's how long. And why they thought it took longer is because all the paperwork between the workshop and to when they actually saw Light Up. And that's immediately when they went like that. They said, that's exactly what we need to do. This is perfect. How do I get access? And of course, then I was like, oh, you want access to Light Up. You don't want to give us requirements. You just want to do it. And that's, again, the big aha moment that went from SAP screens to Databricks and Light Up.
Got it. So it was like the process became so easy now. It literally sounds like it got cut down from something like months or weeks to minutes, right? You could almost instantly do it for them, and then they're curious, how do you manage to do it that fast? So it's really how easy this whole thing became for not just you, but then for your broader team. And that ease of use is what is ultimately driving business value because the checks are not super novel. It's not something that people are realizing they want for the first time. They've been trying to do this forever. And in
Yeah.
fact, doing manually in many cases by creating a data dump out of SAP into Excel and whatnot. But it's really the fact that it's now so easy that it goes from a handful of checks on part of the data footprint to something that's part of the process where it's practically running on 90-95% of your data footprint all the time.
I would say that slightly differently, right? I would say the amount of time it took for us in data to understand the business problem, right? So if you speak to somebody who's in SAP screens all day, they say, "Oh, it's a ZMMR and it's a T code this and it's a ZMAT and all these things that we find ourselves going, so what's a ZMMR exactly, right?" And when they first see Elation, they see like the data layer for the first time. Uh, I'm sorry, when they're in the Lightup, they see the data layer for the first time. And the first question was, how did you know that the table MARA is general material master data? And we said, oh, that's a perfect introduction to our data catalog, which is Elation. And then they log in, they see Mara, and they say, oh, look. And it's like taken the German names for everything and actually broken them down into English definitions. So that was the first, again, realization. And then the second was, I don't need to go to the data group to explain to you what the problem is or try to get you to understand how it actually works. Just give me the tool, which is phenomenal, right? And now the business themselves is actually going to, they have switched from the data team was doing DQ in minutes to now the business is doing DQ in minutes. And we are simply providing a service to say this is exactly what we have, why it's important, and some of the capabilities. And quite frankly, the training that as part of the Lightup professional services that we did was really awesome because you didn't give us this vague training that says here's what Lightup can do. You actually gave us personalized training that shows exactly how we implemented rules that are important to real people in our company. So I really appreciate that. Thank you much.
Saying that, Dan. And just to kind of go into all the different vectors in which you are already driving value in most cases, and you expect to do more so in the future. Here's a laundry list, but is there something you would want to highlight out of all the gains you're starting to see?
Yes. So some of the gains we're starting to see again is um, let's say large or detailed level reporting for people, right? Again, something that's never been seen before. If you are a really senior ranking person of the company, right? It's very easy to say, oh, we should have data quality be better, quite frankly. But now we're providing, you could look into a value stream, like we called it demand to deliver, which was on slide 3, I believe. And you can see here's the objects that we're governing within that particular value stream. And here's how we measure the quality. And here's the most important part, the person that's accountable to make sure that that number stays above a certain threshold, right? And for us, that's provided visibility into this whole demand to deliver workspace that I don't think has ever been seen before, quite frankly. So that's where we're making a lot of headway and we're making a lot of friends, quite frankly. So the data organization is becoming popular, which is, I'm not sure how many organizations can actually say that.
Right. So it's almost like if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, but now you finally have the ability to both measure and manage. And it all
Right,
starts with making it easy to even first get a view of what the data quality footprint looks like. And then
right.
that starts to, and as you're able to double click on that and go into here's what's broken and here's how to fix it, and then a fix materializes in a week, as opposed to months, that's starting to open up the art of possible. And then people are coming to you with use cases, right? You talked about this kind of reverse consulting notion where you are not having to go and tell them this is exciting, but
Yeah.
you want to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, actually, what's nice, two things. One is that people are coming to the data organization with people and, most importantly, funding, right? And they want us, actually, I think it's on the next slide, if you would mind skipping to the next one there. Um, they're coming to us with not these low level problems, right? They've seen that we've proven the technology and they're starting to provide us more complex use cases around data quality and really anomaly detection, right? So we started off thinking with the narrow focus of pain points, pain points that affect people's day-to-day lives and how we can make them better. So data, and then it's transitioned into, well, what data can Lightup point out that's a little bit more business challenge focused, right? So if you think about if you go through a monthly cycle of running a business, right, you're going to have a point where your revenue. We try to bill early, so your revenue will be high in the beginning of the month, and it gradually starts to drop as we try to close out the month. But then purchasing can kind of start to creep up as well, and we want to keep a healthy margin between those, so we're not really affecting our profit and loss, right? And that's where we're starting to push the boundaries of not only what Lightup can do, but we're showing the business very specifically. Let me know when this type of thing is occurring, because that is extremely important to operations, right? Because immediately now purchase requisitions in this particular example will start to be, do you really need to buy that this month? Or do you even really need to buy that? Wouldn't it be easier to stock transfer order from a separate plant instead of actually going through and going through the whole purchase process itself? It's also forcing out, which people really, really love, when people aren't adhering to process, right? So, for example, if you go to purchase something without a purchase requisition, you have violated process, right? It kind of indicates that you're not planning correctly on a lot of levels. So, can Lightup point out every time that that has happened? And who would you? And then we said, of course, how would you like to see this data? And that's typically by region. So who in Saudi Arabia is purchasing without requisitions? Who are the worst offenders and what do we need to do to contact them? And Lightup provides them that visibility.
Awesome. And I think you talked about this. There's like all the different themes that we are hitting upon here, and what things used to look like and what they have been able to be now after implementing Lightup. I think one theme that keeps coming up again and again is this notion of democratization, which is closely tied to the notion of data literacy, right? Which is you don't want this to be tribal knowledge with a small group of people. You kind of talked about the scenario where the person moved and you were just left hanging. Can you talk to that instance and how that has changed now?
Yeah, what's nice is a lot of the challenges, as we were talking about with these pain points, was so and so person used to do this process and they used to understand their job very well. They have left the company, and then when we backfilled somebody, they didn't really have time to train that particular person, right? And so that is a problem in itself that doesn't really have much to do with technology, right? But what we're actually able to, we're pairing our training program with some of the data quality measures as well. So when somebody onboards into the company for the first time, it's not just get them access to SAP. It's get them access to SAP, talk to them about what are we monitoring when you're entering data into SAP. And uh, I hate to sound threatening because it's certainly not a threaten, but if you really don't do a good job putting in a real phone number for a vendor or populating these particular characteristics, such as we had a late shipment, you should indicate the reason why we had a late shipment so we can learn from our mistakes. The two of those together equals to a nice democratized set of information and for people to access it, as well as it kind of it what's kind of rides the Kurt Holtz of training and onboarding people.
Right, so it's almost like the best practices have been encoded into your tooling and system already, and so now when you're making them aware, it's that much easier for them to stay on track, right? It's like you said, it's not to really threaten someone or put them under fire. You're just telling them, look, this is how it should be, but I'm making it easier for you to stay disciplined, and you want this. So it's almost like helping them help themselves, right?
Yeah, yeah, and who wants a senior vice president calling them about poor data entry? Nobody. I personally would want to stay off that list.
Great. And so where are you planning to take this in the next 6, 9, 12 months?
We are stepping on the gas pedal. And so we talked in the beginning of the session about how we're really focusing on what's called demand to deliver, right? And we're going product line by product line. So I think we're about 75% of the way through the product lines. And again, switching to this more joint application development approach, we think that our timeline is going to shrink. So we'll finish this value stream by product line. Of course, the next thing we're going to be focusing on is other value streams. Like, so for example, marketing all the way to we have cash in our bank account, right? There's lots of processes in there, lots of data quality issues, and we're definitely going to be focusing on that. The second thing is we're going all in on the Lakehouse architecture and how Lightup, Databricks, and Elation all kind of play a very solid role here. Because one of the challenges that we're experiencing is it seems like left, right, and center, we find these manual Excel spreadsheets. They just exist everywhere. No, I don't think any company can say they don't have Excel spreadsheets somewhere in a business process, right? So we're coming in with a how can we eliminate that? How can we not only fix it, but prove to the business that if you implemented this manual process in SAP instead of outside of SAP, how everyone is going to value from that, right? And so again, that's sort of a big thing here, which is make sure that we laser focused on data quality and how it makes processes execute smoother, right? How can we continue this footprint that we've grown to other areas of the business? Because I believe every time I talk about data quality, they say, yeah, yeah, yeah. But when they see the changes we've made, they get very excited and start asking more and more questions. Oh, we can do something like that. I had no idea, right? And then in general, just doing whatever we can to make what we're doing extremely visible, so everybody in the company knows why the data portfolio is there, what value we add to the business. So when we go through our funding rounds, I'm not begging people to keep funding our group and you know reduce our or increase our headcount. Excuse me, right? So that's a kind of a quick look at what we're doing over the next 6 months.
Awesome, man. It sounds like you have figured out a solution to one of the hardest problems in data right now, which is to demonstrate and drive ROI and keep the group relevant. So thanks a lot for your insights, Dan. I really wish we could have you in person for this session, but conditions prevailed, and this is what it is. But thanks a lot for recording this session with us, and we'll make people aware of how to reach you should they want to have a deep dive conversation with you on what you just talked about here. Thank you
Yeah,
very
that would
much
be
for
great.
being with us today, Dan. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.